My name is Robert Flemming. I'm 56 years old, and for 16 years I was the man my family said ruined Thanksgiving. The same man who'd been writing the check for it since the year my wife stopped being there to do it herself. This past October, my son-in-law stood on his back deck with a beer in his hand and told the neighbor I was the one thing that made the whole weekend harder to enjoy. My daughter was standing right there. She laughed and said nothing to fix it, and I was at the side of their house holding a stack of folding chairs I'd driven over to drop off. At 2 o'clock that Thanksgiving Sunday, my phone started ringing. Not one call. One after another, the screen barely going dark between them. I didn't show up for the dinner. I didn't write a single check. I still don't fully know what I expected to happen next, but I can tell you it wasn't what did. Before I get into all of it, do me a favor and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It helps more than you know. Now let me go back to where this really started. The planning meeting was the third Saturday of September, always at Lisa's place. My daughter semi-detached in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from me. She had a printed agenda. My daughter has always had a printed agenda. She stood at the head of her own dining room table and walked everyone through the jobs like she was running a committee meeting. Her husband Jason would pick up the extra folding tables from the rental place. Her friend from work would bring dessert squares. My sister Gloria was asked to bring her potato salad, which she's been bringing to family dinners since 1987, and doesn't need to be asked. Then she got to me. Dad, I just need you to show up on time this year. She smiled the way she smiles when there are people in the room. And maybe keep the stories a bit shorter, okay? Last year you kind of ran away with things. Jason made a sound into his coffee. Short, easy, like she'd said something clever. I nodded. I'll be on time. I didn't mention that 45 minutes earlier. Before I'd even left my house, I'd e-transferred the deposit to Heritage Hall Events. $650 to hold the October long weekend date, same as every year for the past 12 years. Before that, it had been a check. I switched to e-transfer when my bank made it easier. Nobody asked me to. Nobody asked me much about the payment side of things. That was just Dad's thing. I sat at the end of the table, near the kitchen, in the chair nobody else picked, and I listened to my daughter explain how the weekend would run. I thought about what she'd said. Keep the stories shorter. I genuinely couldn't tell you what had been wrong with anything I'd said the year before, but the way she delivered it, soft and light, with Jason's small laugh underneath it, you'd have thought I'd stood up and made a scene at a church service. I drove home and my phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Notification from my bank, e-transfer sent $650. I stared at it longer than I should have at a red light. It started small. These things always do. 4 years back, I was handed the turkey at noon and told to get it in the oven by 1. I'm a man who reads instructions. I followed the ones Lisa had written on a sticky note on the counter. By the time everyone sat down, the breast had come out a little dry. I was still reaching for the gravy when Lisa mentioned it to the table. Dad insisted on doing the turkey this year, she said. I told him the timing wouldn't work. She hadn't, but the table laughed and I let it go. 3 years back, I told a story over pie about a camping trip my wife and I had taken up near Algonquin the autumn before the kids were born. A long story, maybe. Jason put his phone face down on the table and looked at the ceiling. Lisa touched my arm. Okay, Dad, I think people are ready for coffee. I stopped talking. 2 years back, I don't even know what I did wrong. A look, a comment about something. By the next morning, it had been decided. Dad made things awkward again. Here's the part that took me 16 years to understand. Every single time I supposedly ruined something, the following week there'd be a phone call. Gentle, almost apologetic. Dad, since the dinner got a bit rough, would you mind covering the extra cost with the caterer? I think it would help smooth things over. And I always did. Because smoothing things over felt like being needed. I never put the two together. The blame on the Saturday, the bill on the following Tuesday. Year after year, the same rhythm, and I moved to it without ever hearing the music for what it actually was. You should know who these people are the way I know them, which is across a table. Lisa sits at the head now. She's 34, married well by most accounts, puts real effort into how things look. My daughter can manage a room. She decides who's comfortable and who's the problem, and somehow it's never her. Jason sits to her right, Sells insurance, treats every dinner like he's one handshake away from closing something. He's 38, firm grip, voice that runs slightly too loud for whatever room he's in. Then there's my son Matt. He's 30, works at an auto body shop just outside of town, comes to dinners with grease under his nails. He can never quite get all the way out. The most honest face at any table I've ever sat at. He never once treated me as anything other than his father. And my sister Gloria. 62, sharper than most people, half her age, and the only person in that family that everyone respects without her ever having had to do anything in particular to earn it. That September at supper at Lisa's, Matt set down his fork. Dad does a lot more for this than people give him credit for. Matt. Lisa didn't look up from her plate. Can you pass the bread? He passed the bread. Jason leaned back, arm hooked over his chair, and looked at me the way you look at something in a room you're thinking about replacing. Take it easy, Robert. You just sit back and let the rest of us handle it. The table moved on. Matt's jaw tightened. I said nothing. Across the table, Gloria set down her water glass very deliberately and looked straight at me. How long, she said, quiet enough that it was just for me. Are you going to keep doing this? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Here's what you need to understand about a man in my position. My wife passed 16 years ago. Lisa was 18. Matt was 13. The house went so quiet after that, I thought it might stay that way forever. So I did the only thing I knew. I kept things going. I kept the lights on, the food coming, the gatherings happening, because my wife had loved Thanksgiving the way some people love a whole season. And as long as the family came back for it every October, I could tell myself we were still the family we'd been before. That was the deal I made in my own head. Pay for the gathering and you get to keep the people. Nobody told me it didn't work that way. 2 weeks before that September dinner, I'd sat in my doctor's office. He'd shown me a chart and used the phrase elevated blood pressure, trending. He told me to cut back. Less stress, better sleep. What's weighing on you, Robert? He asked. I didn't mention the planning meetings. My pension covers my needs and a bit more if I'm careful. Every October for 16 years I had not been careful. I told myself it was what a father did. Maybe some of it was. There are boring jobs in a family and there are fun ones. The fun ones are decorating, cooking, greeting people at the door. The boring jobs are the invoices. Around the 4th or 5th year, Lisa had said, Dad, can you just handle the payments? You're good with that stuff, and I did. Heritage Hall events, the catering company out on the highway, the linen rental, the florist for the centerpieces, the liquor permit that had to be filed through the township every year. One by one, I'd put them all on my accounts and my e-transfers, because it was easier than chasing everyone down for reimbursement, and because being useful felt like being loved. What none of them ever noticed was whose name was on those contracts. Not Lisa's, not Jason's, mine. Robert Flemming on every single one. The account holder, the payer. The man the vendors emailed when something needed confirming, who'd quietly confirm it without mentioning it to anyone at the table. As far as everyone around that table was concerned, Thanksgiving simply happened. The hall was booked, the caterer showed up, the linens appeared. Lisa took the credit in front of the neighbors, and I let her, because what father doesn't want his daughter to shine? I found out how far it had really gone on a Sunday in late September. Lisa had asked me to drop off some folding chairs she'd borrowed from my garage. I pulled into her driveway, got out, carried them around the side of the house toward the back gate. Jason was on the deck with a couple from next door, the Hendersons, who come to Thanksgiving most years. He had a can of beer. He was talking in that carrying voice he uses when he wants to be heard. Between you and me, he was saying, it runs a lot better when Robert's not involved. He shows up and finds something to pick at every year. Lisa and I carry the whole weekend, always have. Mrs. Henderson said something about how lovely the dinners always were. That's all, Lisa, Jason said. She puts in the work. Robert just shows up and looks for something to complain about. Then I heard my daughter's voice. She was right there, just off to the side. She laughed, easy, warm, and said nothing to correct him. Not a single word. I stood at the corner of their fence with 4 folding chairs in my arms and felt something I'd been holding for 16 years quietly set itself down. I put the chairs against the fence without making a sound. I got back in my truck and drove home and didn't turn on the radio. That night I opened my laptop and looked at every contract I'd been part of for 16 Octobers. I'm a man who trusts numbers. Numbers don't laugh at you. They don't look at the ceiling when you're talking. I went back through old e-transfers and bank statements until my eyes ached. Hall rental, catering deposit, catering final balance, linen rental, florist it, liquor permit. Year after year, same names on the other end, same account on mine. I added it all up. I'm not going to say the total out loud, but each year it had come to roughly what you'd spend on a solid set of winter tires and a long weekend somewhere nice. Over 16 years, that's enough to have made a meaningful dent in a mortgage, or retired me a year earlier than I'm going to manage. I'd handed it over in slices and called each slice love. I sat with the number for a long time. Then I did the other calculation, the one that mattered more. In 16 years of paying for this, how many times had I actually felt like a father at that table? Not a wallet. Not the man who made things awkward. A father. I couldn't think of a single one. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to send a long message or bring it up at the next dinner. That's not who I am. I was going to stop. I was going to take my name off every piece of paper it was on, and I was going to do it properly. No vendors left stranded, no strangers holding a mess I'd created. But I was going to stop. Monday morning I made phone calls, calm ones. I started with Heritage Hall Events. The woman who manages the bookings has known my voice for years. I need to cancel my reservation for the October long weekend and remove my payment information from the file, I said. A pause, the sound of a keyboard. Mr. Flemming, you've had this booking for a long time. Are you certain? I'm certain, but I don't want to leave anyone in a difficult position. My daughter, Lisa Harwood, is the one who actually organizes the event. If she wants to keep the date, she can call you directly, set up the reservation in her own name, and put down her own deposit. I'll give you her number. Another pause, longer this time. So to be clear, the booking and all the payments have been coming from you. Every year, I said, but not this one. I made the same call to the caterer, the linen rental, the florist, the township office for the liquor permit. Same words, more or less, each time. Cancel my account. If my daughter wants to continue the order, she can do it herself, in her name, on her card. I'm not pulling the plug on anyone. I'm just taking my name off the bottom. It took less than an hour, 16 years undone, before my coffee went cold. The woman at the florist, before she let me go, said, "Is everything all right at home, Mr. Flemming?" I told her it was. For the first time in a while, I meant it. Matt came by Tuesday after his shift, still in his work shirt, smelling of primer and paint thinner. He stopped in my doorway and looked at me. "Something's different," he said. "What happened?" So I told him. The Jason's voice, Lisa laughing and saying nothing, the contracts, the phone calls that morning. My son sat down at my kitchen table and put his face in both hands for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Dad, I've wanted to say something for years. Every time I tried, she'd talk right over me before I got 2 sentences out. You were one voice against a room that had already made up its mind," I said. "That's a hard place to stand." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing loud," I said. "I don't need you fighting anybody. I just need you to tell the truth if someone ever asks you straight." He held my eyes. Then he nodded once, the way his grandfather used to when something was settled. "If they ask me straight," he said, "I'll tell them exactly what I've seen." Lisa called Wednesday night, bright as always. "Dad, hi. Quick thing. The caterer needs final head count, and Heritage Hall is saying there's something off with the file. Can you call them and sort it out like usual?" "Like usual." "I won't be handling the Thanksgiving payments this year, Lisa." A small, confused laugh, like she'd heard me wrong. "What do you mean it's just one call?" "I mean I won't be coming to Thanksgiving, and I've removed myself from all the vendor accounts. If you want to keep the hall, the caterer, all of it, you'll need to call them and set it up in your name, on your card." The line went quiet. Then Dad, "What, you can't just, it's 2 weeks away." "I know. Call Heritage Hall tomorrow. They fill up fast." "Is this about your feelings? You want to ruin Thanksgiving for the grandkids because of some grudge?" "I don't want anyone miserable," I said. "I want to stop paying for a weekend where I spend most of it being told I'm the problem. That is so unfair, after everything we do for you." I kept my voice even, the way you do on a job when someone's panicking and you're not. The hall will need to hear from you if you want to hold the date. Good night, Lisa. I mean that kindly. I set the phone on the counter and watched it light up again and again. By Thursday, she'd called in everyone she could reach. My phone filled up, cousins I'd seen at funerals, people from my wife's side, a family friend who just wanted to check in. Every message wore the same coat. We're worried about you, Robert. This isn't like you. Lisa's beside herself. Don't let pride wreck the holiday. Think about what your wife would have wanted. That last one knew where I lived. I sat in my chair and read through all of them, and I felt the old thing start up my spine, the guilt. 16 years of it knows exactly where to find you. For a good hour I nearly folded. I thought, just pay it, Robert, keep the peace. It's one weekend. It's what you always do. I had Lisa's name up on my phone, ready to call. Then a text came in from Gloria. I know what's happening. I've been watching this for 15 years and kept my mouth shut, because I thought it wasn't my place. Don't you dare fold. Not this time. I'm with you all the way. I read it twice. My sister doesn't waste words. When she says she's with you, she means it down to the ground. I set the phone in my lap. My hands weren't entirely steady. I'm a steady man, but they weren't. I didn't answer the cousins. I didn't call Lisa. I sat in the quiet of my own house and let the phone ring itself out. Jason didn't call. Jason showed up. Friday evening, headlights in my driveway, a knock that was heavier than it needed to be. I opened the door. He filled the frame, jaw set, that selling something energy turned sharp. We need to talk. Come in then. He didn't sit. He stood in my living room like he was pricing the furniture. You're making Lisa look bad in front of people she has to see every day. Vendors are calling her like she's some kind of deadbeat. Do you think this looks strong? It looks bitter. I let him go. You made a commitment, he said. Every year, same deal. You don't yank it out from under everyone, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving because your feelings got hurt. What commitment did I make, Jason? That stopped him for a moment. You always pay. Everyone knows that. Everyone assumed that, I said. That's different. His face went red. The contracts have names on them, I said. Whoever's name is on them pays. That's how it works everywhere else. You just never had to look at them. He stepped closer. This is a disgrace. Lisa carries this family. Then she can carry Thanksgiving, I said. She'll be good at it. I walked to the front door and opened it. Cold October air came in. Good night, Jason. Drive safe. He left. He had to. There was nothing left to say to a man who'd finally stopped agreeing. I locked the door. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. I wasn't there for the next part. Matt was, and he told me about it later, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea he forgot to drink. Lisa had gone to Heritage Hall events to rebook the date herself. She'd assumed it would be a 5-minute formality. The coordinator sat her down, slid a fresh contract across the desk, and turned a printed quote around so Lisa could see the full picture. Hall rental, catering package, bar service, lean-in rental, florist. The whole account, line by line, with a deposit required to hold the date and full payment, due the night of the event. Matt said he watched his sister's face do something he'd never seen it do. The color left it. Her eyes moved down the page slowly, like she was reading in a language she mostly knew but had to concentrate on. Then the coordinator, trying to be helpful, pulled up the account history on her screen. You've been with us a long time as a family. Same weekend, every October. A pause, always under the same name. She turned the screen so Lisa could see. Robert Flemming. Robert Flemming. Robert Flemming. 16 entries, one for each year, going all the way back to the very first booking. She just sat there, Matt told me, staring at the screen like the floor had moved. For the first time, she was actually looking at what those weekends cost. Not the fun of it, the cost of it. After a long moment, Lisa asked the coordinator one question. You paid for all of this, every year? And the coordinator said, yes, ma'am, every year, without exception. What do you do when you're staring at a bill you can't cover, 2 weeks before a holiday, with a coordinator waiting politely for your card? You do what this family had always done. You turn to whoever's still within reach. Lisa called Matt that evening. He put her on speaker, sitting right across from me at my own table. I just need you to float me some money, just until after the holiday. Dad's being impossible and I'm stuck. My son looked at me. I said nothing. This was his line to draw. How much? Matt asked. She named a number that was real money for a man who saves carefully. No, Matt said. Silence. What? No, I'm not paying for your party, same as Dad. A longer pause. After everything, Matt, are you serious right now? After everything what? His voice stayed even, but I heard the years stacked behind it. After every time you've told everyone at the table, I was the one who couldn't get it together? After every time you talked about Dad behind his back to people who had no business knowing? I never said anything about Dad. And here's where my son surprised me. Lisa, I have a message you sent me 2 Christmases ago. You called him a lonely old man who pays to be included. A beat. I've been holding on to it for 2 years. I shouldn't have. The line went very quiet. Delete that, she said. Her voice had changed, gone smaller. I will, Matt said, but not to use it against you. That's not how Dad operates, and it's not how I do things either. I just wanted you to know I remember. He paused. I'm deleting it right now. I don't want to carry it anymore. He hung up and deleted the message right there at my table. He looked at me, almost apologetic. She sent that a long time ago. I held on to it too long. We don't win this by throwing her own words back at her, I said. He nodded once. We win it by being the people she said we weren't. Let me step outside the story for a moment, because I think some of you know exactly where I was that week. Maybe you've been the one who quietly carried your family. The one who paid, who planned, who fixed things, and got treated like it was nothing. If that's you, tell me in the comments. Tell me how long it went on, and stay with me, because what happened at 2 o'clock that Thanksgiving Sunday is the part this whole story has been building toward. Hit like so I know you're still with me. The days before Thanksgiving were the loudest quiet I'd ever lived through. Lisa called. I let it ring. Jason called. Same, a cousin or two. An unknown number that was probably one of the vendors trying to figure out what had happened to their regular contact. I let them all ring. I'd said what needed to be said, clearly and without cruelty. There was nothing left to add. A person can only repeat themselves so many times before silence becomes the more honest answer. So I did something I hadn't done in 16 Octobers. I took care of my own place. I cleaned the house properly. I put up the small table centerpiece my wife had bought at a market the autumn before she got sick. The one I usually left in the closet because I was too busy sorting out everyone else's weekend. I bought a small roasting chicken, not a full bird, because it was going to be me and Matt and whoever Matt wanted to bring. Gloria called once, and that one I answered. You holding up? She asked. I'm all right, I said, and I meant it. They're still scrambling, she told me. The story keeps shifting, depending on who Lisa's talking to. One version has you as the victim, one has you as the villain. A pause. She went ahead and booked the hall herself, put down what she could scrape together as a deposit. That surprised me. She told her cousin you'd show up at the last minute and sort it out. Gloria said flat. She told her that's what you always do. I let that sit. Not this time, I said. I know that. She doesn't believe it. A beat. You're doing the right thing, Robert. Your wife would have done it 10 years sooner. That one stayed with me through the rest of the week. Thanksgiving Sunday morning, I stood at my kitchen window with a coffee and watched the light come through the maple in the backyard. The leaves were the last of the color, rust and orange, and the sky had that flat October gray that comes just before the first real cold. Somewhere across town, Heritage Hall was being set up for a dinner I'd always paid for and was no longer attending. At 2:05, the phone started. The caterer first, I let it ring, then the hall, then Lisa. I watched her name glow on the screen and set the phone face down on the table. Then faster, Jason, a cousin Lisa again, unknown number. The screen barely went dark between calls. I made a sandwich. A man still has to eat on the day his life rearranges itself. Around 2:20, a different name came up, Gloria. That one, I answered. Robert. Her voice was low and steady, but there was something moving underneath it. You need to come down here. Gloria, I already said everything I had to say. I know what you said. This isn't about the money anymore. A pause. Behind her I could hear the hall. Voices gone strange and tense. Something's happening. You should hear it with your own ears. What's happening? Lisa's, about to find out what it means to stand on her own for the first time in her life. And the Hendersons are about to find out who actually gave them 16 Thanksgivings. A beat. Don't give away your right to be in the room for that by sitting at home. I looked at my jacket on the hook by the door. You're not coming to pay, she said, reading my silence the way only a sister can. You're coming to be seen, there's a difference. I picked up my keys. I left my wallet on the counter on purpose. For once I was bringing nothing but myself. I parked in the Heritage Hall lot and walked across the gravel toward the warm windows. I could see the lights, the shapes of people. I opened the front door. The room shifted. It's a strange thing, walking into a space your money built, where you've always sat at the far end of the table, and feeling the whole room go quiet because you arrived. The hall looked exactly the way it always had. Warm light, round tables with centerpieces, people I'd fed for 16 years holding drinks. The Hendersons near the bar, the same neighbors who'd been on Jason's deck when he'd talked about me getting in the way. Lisa was not flawless. She'd been earlier, I could tell, she has that ability, but she wasn't now. She was pale. The coordinator was standing nearby with a folder open, waiting for a private moment that kept not arriving. Lisa saw me come through the door, and something moved across her face. Relief, first the cavalry. Dad always comes. Dad. She stepped toward me, voice pitched for the room. Thank God. Tell them there's been some kind of mix-up with the account and that you'll get it sorted out. I stood just inside the door, coat still on, and looked at my daughter. There's no mix-up, Lisa. Dad. Her voice sharpened, reaching for the old script. You're doing this again, you're ruining it, you always do this. 20 years of habit in her voice. 2 decades of dad made things awkward. I didn't raise mine. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I just stopped paying for a dinner where I'm treated like a guest, nobody actually invited. The room leaned in. The coordinator, doing her job and clearly confused, looked between the two of us. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just need someone to authorize tonight's balance. We have Miss Harwood's deposit on file, but the remainder is due this evening. She hesitated, then checked her tablet. I also want to make sure I have the right account. Every Thanksgiving before this one, the booking and payment came through under one name. She looked at the screen. Robert Flemming. Same account, going all the way back to our very first record of this event. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. I watched it move through the room. The Hendersons, who'd been on their back deck when Jason said I just got in the way. The cousin who'd texted me the word selfish. People who'd complimented Lisa for years on a beautiful Thanksgiving dinner she had not, in any financial sense, provided. Every one of them doing the same quiet arithmetic at the same moment. I didn't say a word. I watched Jason. He'd been wearing that easy, in-control look since I'd walked in. The look of a man sure the room was still his. I saw it leave. Saw it slide right off him as the neighbors he'd been performing for all year realized exactly who'd been carrying the thing he'd taken credit for. He looked at the Hendersons. The Hendersons looked at the floor. Lisa stood frozen, her audience quietly reassembling itself around a truth she'd kept buried for 16 years. Then Matt stepped forward from the side of the room. My son, grease along one knuckle that never quite washes out, still in the same jacket he'd worn to help move furniture that morning, walked to the middle of that hall and stood there. I want to say something, he said, and his voice was quiet enough that the room went quieter to hear it. For 16 years, the story was the same at every one of these dinners. Dad made it awkward. Dad couldn't let things be nice. Dad ran things into the ditch. He looked around slowly. I heard it so many times I almost started thinking it had to be at least partly true. Nobody moved. But here's what nobody mentioned at any of those dinners. The man who supposedly made every Thanksgiving worse was the only reason any of us had one. He paid for all of it. The hall, the food, the bar you're standing at, the lights above your heads. Matt's voice caught just slightly, and we let him sit at the end of the table and told each other he was the problem. Someone set down their glass on a table. Then Gloria stepped up beside him, my sister, the one person in that family no one has ever found a way to dismiss. I have watched this go on for 15 years, she said, and her voice carried without her trying. I kept my tongue because I told myself it wasn't my house, and they weren't my children. That was my mistake. She looked directly at Lisa. Your father is not the man who ruined Thanksgiving. He is the man who gave it to you, quietly, every single year, while you let people make him into the joke at the end of the table. Lisa's mouth opened, then closed. No one in the room jumped in to soften it, no light laugh, no gentle arm on the shoulder to steer the moment somewhere kinder. The silence belonged to Lisa now, all of it. I let it sit. Then I spoke, because some things a father should say in his own voice. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. That's not why I came. I looked out at the faces, neighbors, family, people I'd fed for 16 Octobers without most of them knowing it was me. I loved doing this in the beginning. After my wife passed, keeping Thanksgiving was how I kept us together. For a long time, that mattered more to me than anything else. The old grief, quiet and familiar, moved through me. But somewhere along the way, I started believing the only way to stay part of my family was to fund it. And once you believe that, people will let you go right on believing it. I looked at my daughter, not with cruelty, just with clarity. I'm 56 years old. My blood pressure is not where it should be, and I'm done paying for a seat at a table where I'm treated like something to be managed. Lisa's eyes were wet now. The performance was gone. There was just a frightened woman standing where it used to be. So here is how things go from now on, I said, and I kept my voice even and kind. Whoever hosts pays. That's how it works for everyone. And me, I'll come to any dinner I'm invited to as a father. Not as a check, that's all I came to say. I turned toward the door. The cold October air came in sharp when I pushed it open. Nobody reached for my arm. Nobody moved to keep the peace the way they always had. Walking across that gravel lot, lighter than I'd felt in years, I understood something I hadn't before. For once, I'd kept Thanksgiving by leaving it. The dinner didn't recover. Matt told me later that people started drifting out within the hour, the way they do when the air goes out of a room. Polite goodbyes, coats gathered quickly, and then the sound of cars in the parking lot. Lisa settled what she could that night and arranged a payment plan with Heritage Hall for the remainder. Part on her card, the balance spread over the next 2 months. The full freight of one Thanksgiving landing on the woman who'd taken credit for 16 of them. I won't pretend there was no grief in hearing that. It's a hard thing. Watching your daughter carry a weight for the first time when you've spent years lifting it for her. The story moved through the neighborhood the way things do in a town where people know each other. By November, the version going around wasn't about what Robert Flemming had done to the Harwood family's Thanksgiving. It was about what had been done to him and what nobody had thought to examine for 16 years. The Hendersons sent an actual cardstock in an envelope through the mail slot. Inside, in careful handwriting, "We didn't know. We should have paid closer attention. You always seemed like a decent man. Now we understand why." A cousin who'd texted me the word selfish called to apologize. She couldn't quite come at it straight, but she tried, and I let her. I'm not in the business of collecting shame like a debt. Jason went quiet. The thing about a man who lives by the impression he makes. The neighbors he'd performed for were the same ones he'd need for years to come. He'd spent that in one careless afternoon on a back deck, and it didn't come back to him. My Thanksgiving was a roasting chicken, paper plates, Matt and the woman he'd been seeing, who laughed easily and asked me real questions about my work. Gloria came and stayed too late and bossed me around my own kitchen, in the way only a sister can, which felt exactly right. It was the best Thanksgiving I could remember. About 10 days later, Lisa called. Not bright, not breezy, just tired. "Can I come by?" she asked. Just me. She came alone, sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd done the math on 16 years of expenses. For a while, neither of us said much. "I saw the numbers," she finally said. "All of them. When I sat down at Heritage Hall, I actually looked." She turned her coffee cup slowly in both hands. "I never knew, Dad. I want you to believe that. I never once sat down and looked at what any of it actually cost." "I know," I said. "I made it easy not to." She nodded. "Everyone keeps asking me how I let it go on that long, and I don't have a good answer. It was just handled. Every year it was handled. You handled it, so I never had to think about it." She stopped. "So I didn't. I didn't rush her. I've learned the value of letting a quiet sit." "Jason's furious," she said. "Not at himself, at me. Says I made him look like an idiot in front of the whole neighborhood." A short, unhappy laugh, like it was my job to stop him from saying it. There it was. I let it pass for now. "I don't know how to do any of this," she admitted, and her voice went thin. "I don't know how to host something I actually pay for. I'm 34 years old and I've never had to. You always? She stopped. You just always did. And I felt it then, not satisfaction. The plain, sad weight of the truth. I had done this. Not the cruelty that had been hers and Jason's, but the helplessness. I'd handled everything for so long that my own daughter had never learned she could carry it herself. I'd called it love. It had made her smaller. You'll learn, I told her. It's not too late. It's just a skill like any other. She looked at me like she wanted to believe it. After she left, the old voice came back, the gentle one, the reasonable one, the one that sounds like love and had cost me 16 years. She came to you, Robert. She apologized, more or less. Why not just cover the Heritage Hall balance? It's one payment. What's the money for if not your own kids? I sat in the dark with that voice for a long time. It's persuasive, 16 years deep. I even opened my banking app, thumb over the screen. It would have been 3 taps. Back to being the man who fixed it, the necessary one, the hero of the morning after. Then my phone buzzed. Matt, don't do it, Dad. Whatever you're about to do, don't. A minute later, Gloria. Saw Lisa's car at your place. If she asks for money, the answer's the same as it was last week. I closed the banking app without doing a thing. The hardest moment wasn't walking into that hall. It wasn't standing at my door while Jason tried to fill the frame. It was sitting alone in my kitchen afterward, choosing not to rescue my daughter from something she needed to learn to carry herself. Love, I was figuring out at 56, sometimes means letting the people you care about stand on their own, even when every part of you wants to be the one who catches them. The next Thanksgiving was at my house, small, just the way I wanted it. I made the chicken the way my wife used to, with rosemary and lemon under the skin, looking up half the steps as I went. Matt brought his girlfriend, who asked me real questions and laughed at the right moments. Gloria came early and stayed late and bossed me around my own kitchen in a way that felt entirely correct. And Lisa came. She brought a squash soup she'd made herself, a little underseasoned but genuinely hers, and she came with her hands empty of demands, no agenda, no clipboard, no project waiting behind her smile. Just my daughter, quieter than I'd ever seen her, asking if she could help set the table. Things weren't fixed. I want to be honest about that. You don't undo 16 years over one roast chicken. There was a carefulness between us, a tenderness with bruises still underneath it. She and Jason were working some things out separately by then, but she was learning. She'd thrown a birthday party for her kids that fall, paid for it herself, and called to tell me about it, proud as anything, and I'd been proud right back. That night I sat at the head of my own table, not because I'd paid for it, because my family had put me there. Late, after the kids had fallen asleep in the living room, and Matt was washing dishes he'd insisted on doing, Lisa found me by the kitchen window. We stood looking out at the backyard, the maple bare now, frost on the grass, the night very still. I owe you more than I know how to say, she said quietly. I'm not going to try to say all of it tonight, I'd get it wrong. You don't have to. There's just one part. She turned to look at me. Thank you, Dad, for all those years. I never said it. I never even understood what I was walking past every single time I didn't. Her voice went thin. I'm sorry it took losing it to make me see you. No clipboard, no project waiting behind it, no bill coming due. Just my daughter, 20 years late and meaning every word. I forgive you, I said, not because she'd earned it with a perfect apology, because carrying it was heavier than setting it down, and I was done carrying things that had never been mine to carry in the first place. She cried a little. I put my arm around her. For the first time in 16 years, it didn't cost me a single thing. And it was worth more than every check I'd ever written. Here's what I learned, and I'll give it to you plain, the way I wish someone had told me at 40. You cannot pay your way into being respected. You can only pay your way into being used. The day I stopped writing the check was the day I became worth showing up for. Keep yours. You've earned it. Everyone went home eventually. Matt and his girlfriend, Gloria with a container of leftover soup, Lisa with her sleeping kids buckled in the back seat. I stood in the doorway and watched the taillights disappear down the street. Then I went back inside and turned off the kitchen light. I stood for a moment in the dark, in the quiet of a house that was finally completely mine. For 16 years, I'd kept this place warm for everyone but myself. Tonight, it had been full of the right people for the right reasons, and the warmth of it stayed in the walls long after they were gone. I'd kept Thanksgiving all those years by paying for it. This year, I'd kept it by finally being worth the drive.